Have you ever wondered, my friend, why some men seem to walk through life as though an invisible hand arranged everything in their favor, while others struggle and push and pray and yet remain exactly where they are? It is not that life loves one more than another. It is not that Providence has chosen a few favorites. The difference is very simple. One has learned to speak the language the universe understands, and the other has not. Tonight I want to talk to you about that language. I call it the secret speech the universe always answers. You may not know it, but you have been speaking to the universe from the moment you first drew breath. Every hour of the day you address it, and every hour of the day it answers you with absolute faithfulness. Look around at your world. Look at your relationships, your bank account, your body, the work you do, the place where you sleep. All of it is the universe repeating back to you, in solid form, the language you have been speaking, in the silence of your own mind. I am not speaking of the polite sentences you mention to your friends. I am not speaking of the words you say in prayer when you kneel at night. I mean the deeper language beneath all that, the tone of feeling you consent to, the quiet mutterings you carry on inside yourself all day, the way you see yourself when no one is watching. That inner language is what the universe hears, and that alone is what it answers. Before we go any further, I want you to have a little taste of what I mean. You may be sitting or lying down. It does not matter. Gently close your eyes, and for a moment forget this room, forget the chair, forget my voice. Let us test something. Imagine just for now that every desire of your heart has already been fulfilled. Not tomorrow, not next month, but now. Imagine that the letter you longed for has arrived. The body you prayed for is yours. The reconciliation you hoped for has taken place. The money you needed is in your hands. Do not ask how. Do not begin to reason. Simply slip into the feeling that it is so. Ask yourself quietly, if everything were already as I wish it to be, how would I feel? And then allow that feeling to rise. Do not strain. Let it come the way a fragrance comes. When someone opens a window, a soft easing in the chest, a little wave of relief, perhaps a smile that wants to form at the corners of your mouth. Let it be there. Stay with it for a few breaths. Feel the weight of fulfillment, the simple, ordinary naturalness of done. Now, while you hold that feeling, notice something. You are not begging. You are not pleading. You are not bargaining with God. In this moment, you are simply being the one who already has. That, my friend, is the true language of the universe. That feeling, that inner wordless knowing, is a sentence far louder in heaven than 1,000 spoken prayers. You may open your eyes if you wish, but do not lose that awareness. I want you to understand that your life, as you now know it, is nothing more and nothing less than your inner language made visible. Every street you walk, every face you meet, every event you call accident or coincidence, is an echo of something first whispered in the chambers of your imagination. When I say imagination, I do not mean idle daydreaming or childish fancy. I mean the one power in you that can create a world, the sacred place where you see without eyes and hear without ears. That inner room where you talk to yourself and about others. That is the temple where you speak to God, and God is your own wonderful human imagination. If you would change your world, you must first change the language you speak in that temple. No outer action, however noble, can permanently alter a life built upon the old inner speech. You may move to a new city, marry a new partner, take up a new occupation, but if you carry with you the same silent conversation, the same mood of I am unwanted, or I am always struggling, or nothing ever works for me, then you will find, as surely as night follows day, that the new place, the new face, the new job will soon begin to show you the same old story. I know this from personal experience. There was a time when I lived in a modest little room in New York, with very little money and seemingly few prospects. Outwardly, I was doing all that the world tells a man he should do. I worked, I studied, I tried to be practical, yet nothing truly changed, because inwardly, I still spoke the language of lack. I said to myself, I have no money. I come from a small island. I have no great education. It is hard to succeed. These were my silent prayers, and the universe, ever faithful, said, Amen, and gave me more of the same. It was only when I learned, that my own inner talking was the cause of my outer world, that things began to move. I discovered that if I would change the conversation within myself and persist in the new language, the outer picture must, by law, conform. This was not a theory to me. I proved it in the most practical ways. I changed the way I spoke to myself about money, and money came. I changed the way I spoke to myself about my body, and my body changed. I changed the way I spoke about others, and their behavior toward me altered accordingly. So I say to you tonight, with absolute certainty, you have been talking to the universe all your life. Perhaps you have been saying, I am lonely, I am sick, I am unlucky, I am not good enough. If so, it is no wonder that your world-obedient servant, that it is, has echoed those sentences in the form of events and circumstances. But if you will dare to learn a new language and speak it until it becomes natural, you will see what the world calls magic. The language of the universe is not complicated. It is not reserved for the wise or the holy. It is simple. A child uses it more easily than a scholar. It is the language of feeling, of assumption, of inner tone. When you feel something as true, even though your senses deny it, you have already spoken to the universe in its mother tongue. Consider a man who, though poor in appearance, quietly feels himself wealthy. He may walk the same streets as his neighbor, ride the same tram, eat the same simple food. Yet inwardly he wears another garment. He speaks to himself of abundance, of ease, of being provided for. Though his purse is light, his inner language is rich. Give such a man a little time, and you will see his world rearrange itself to match his inner speech. Opportunities will appear, ideas will come, doors will open. The outer world must conform to the language he consistently speaks within. On the other hand, give a man a fortune who still secretly feels himself unworthy, unlucky, rejected. His words about himself are those of a beggar. Though he may sleep in a fine house and eat at a rich table, sooner or later his world will echo his inner speech. The fortune will melt away, the house will be lost, the friends will vanish, for he has spoken the language of loss, and he must reap its fruits. Your task, then, is not to force the outer world, but to become attentive to your inner language. What are you saying, silently, about your future? When you think of tomorrow, do you imagine more of the same trouble, the same disappointment? Then you are prophesying. When you talk to yourself about your body, do you call it old, weak, easily tired? Do you speak as though health were something apart from you, something you have to chase? Then you are praying for weakness, and the universe cannot help but say yes. But you can change it this very moment. You can choose to speak differently. You can say within yourself, I am strong. I am vigorous. Life flows through me. Perhaps your senses will protest at first. Perhaps your body will creak and complain. No matter. The old language has had many years to build that evidence. Persist in the new speech, and the evidence must change. You may say to me, but Neville, I cannot help how I feel. My dear, that is simply not true. You may not yet know how to help how you feel, but you can learn. Feeling follows assumption. Change what you assume to be true, and feeling must adjust itself. Let us test it again. Suppose you were to receive, this very evening, the most wonderful news you could imagine. Perhaps it is a letter from someone you love, or the offer of a position you have long desired, or the announcement that a debt is forgiven. Whatever it may be, picture that it has already arrived. How would you sit then? How would you breathe? You would not be stiff and anxious. You would be relaxed, at ease, perhaps a little amused at your former worry. You can take on that posture now. You can breathe that way. Now, as you do, a corresponding feeling rises. That feeling is the language of fulfillment. If you sustain it, gently but firmly, the outer event that would naturally justify such a feeling is compelled to appear. It is law. I am not asking you to believe me blindly. I am inviting you to test this. The universe is not distant. It is not deaf. It is your own consciousness made wide. Speak to it in the only language it understands, the language of feeling and assumption, and you will prove the truth of what I say. From this moment on, become aware that there are two of you. There is the outer man, who moves through the world of facts, counting coins, reading newspapers, listening to the opinions of others. Then there is the inner man, who dwells in imagination, who speaks his secret word in the dark. The outer man is the shadow. The inner man is the voice that casts it. When the shadow displeases you, do not attack the shadow. Change the voice. When I learned this, my whole approach to life altered. I stopped blaming people and circumstances. I stopped saying, if only they would behave differently, or if only I had been born under better conditions. I realized that my world was my own inner language objectified. To curse the world would be to curse my own harvest. Instead, I began to plant new seeds. If I desired friendship, I spoke inwardly as a man who already enjoyed warm companionship. I would hear friends calling my name, see myself laughing in their company. If I desired success in my work, I held conversations of congratulations in my mind, heard others acknowledge my achievement. Every night before sleep, I rehearsed these inner dialogues until they became so natural that I could almost forget that the outer world had not yet caught up. And then, how shall I put it? The universe conspired. Events I could never have planned began to occur. People I had never met were drawn to me. Letters arrived, opportunities appeared. Nothing miraculous in the eyes of the world perhaps, yet to me it was the perfect, precise reflection of the language I had been speaking within. I want you to see your own life this way. Stop regarding your days as a series of accidents. See them instead as the echoes of sentences you once whispered to yourself. When you realize this, you cease to be a victim and become, in truth, the operant power. Now you may say, Neville, I have spoken poorly for many years. Have I ruined my life? Not at all. No harvest is final. You have at every moment the power to sow anew. The very fact that you now hear these words is proof that you are ready to speak a different language. Tonight, when you are alone, I want you to take a simple desire, something you dearly wish were true, and instead of asking for it, begin to feel from it. Ask yourself, if this were already an accomplished fact, what would my inner language be? Would you still call yourself poor? Would you still say, I am unnoticed, I am unloved, I am a failure? Surely not. You would naturally speak in another tongue, perhaps only a gentle, quiet assurance. Everything is well with me. I am taken care of. Life favors me. Begin to speak that way now. Even though the outer picture has not yet changed, you will find at first that the old words try to return. Like stubborn guests, they knock at the door of your attention, reminding you of your so-called facts. You do not have to quarrel with them. Simply let them knock and do not open. Turn instead to the new language, the language of fulfillment, and occupy it again. In time, the new speech becomes as familiar as the old once was. Then it begins to express itself automatically. You wake in the morning and find that your first thought is no longer one of dread, but of quiet expectation. That is the sign that the universe has heard you. The outer world will soon echo that tone. My friend, I tell you, you are far greater than you know. You are not a little creature begging favors from an indifferent sky. You are the very place where the universe listens and speaks. Your imagination is the channel through which the infinite shapes itself into form. Speak to it correctly, and you will watch what the world calls miracles. But to you, they will be the most natural things in the world, for they will be nothing but the outer confirmation of a language you have long since learned to speak within. When I speak of the language of the universe, I must tell you, it has nothing to do with the words that pass your lips. You could memorize every holy text ever written, recite them night and day, and yet, if the feeling behind those words contradicts them, the universe remains unmoved. For the universe, my friend, does not hear the sound of your voice. It feels the vibration of your state of consciousness. The true language of creation is not formed of syllables or grammar. It is made of feeling, imagination, and inner speech, three strands woven into a single living thread. This is the language God speaks. And God is your own wonderful human imagination. Feeling is the root. Imagination gives it shape. Inner speech gives it direction. Together they form the state from which your world emerges. You see, your outer life is not independent of you. It is the visible shadow of your inner state. Consciousness is the only reality. Everything else is but its reflection. Let me illustrate what I mean. Suppose you say, I am successful. You may repeat it 100 times, but if beneath the words you still feel fear, unworthiness, or doubt, you are not speaking success. you are speaking lack. The outer world will mirror the feeling, not the phrase. But if you say nothing at all, and yet you feel yourself successful, walk, breathe, and live from that conviction, then you have uttered the most eloquent prayer the universe can ever hear. Words without feeling are dead, but one moment of genuine inner conviction can move mountains. I remember years ago, I wished to leave New York and return to Barbados for Christmas. I had no money for the passage. Logic said it was impossible, but I had learned that imagination creates reality. So I decided to test it once more. Night after night, I closed my eyes and felt myself in my mother's home. I smelled the salt air from the Caribbean, heard the soft laughter of my brothers, felt the warmth of the island breeze upon my skin. I did not make long speeches to God. I simply felt myself there. Within a matter of weeks, a series of events unfolded that allowed me to travel home without paying a single penny. The law worked perfectly, as it always does. You see, I was not begging an external power. I was occupying the state of being in Barbados. That state, once assumed, must externalize itself. Every bridge of incident, every person, every circumstance was drawn to fulfill the word I had spoken in silence, the word of feeling. This is the true language of the universe. You speak it every time you allow yourself to feel something as real. It does not matter whether your reason approves or not. Reason always argues for the evidence of the senses, but imagination transcends them. The universe does not care what your neighbor thinks, nor what your bank book shows. It listens only to the feeling you consent to as true. Everything you can ever desire already exists as a potential state. The moment you feel yourself into that state, you begin to vibrate in harmony with it, and what the world calls coincidence rushes to meet you. But I tell you, there is no coincidence. There is only correspondence. When you dwell on fear, you are speaking in the language of fear, and the universe answers with fearful events. When you dwell on peace, you are speaking peace, and peace must come. When you imagine yourself loved, you are pronouncing love into being, and the world mirrors that love back to you through faces and gestures and chance encounters. So you see, the universe has no choice but to obey you. You are forever declaring yourself, forever giving orders through the feeling you occupy. If you wish to change your world, you must first change your state, change the inner conversation, change the mood of being, change the assumption from which you live. I do not mean you should struggle to maintain a false cheerfulness or recite empty affirmations. I mean that you deliberately choose the state that implies your desire is already fulfilled, and you rest in it as though it were the most natural thing in the world. For indeed, it is. Consciousness is the only reality. Everything else, the people you meet, the letters you receive, the conditions of your health or fortune, is simply the outpicturing of what you are conscious of being. You cannot escape it, for you are the operant power. The world is your mirror, reflecting faithfully whatever you dare to assume about yourself. When I first grasped this truth, it changed my entire outlook. I stopped seeing the universe as a collection of forces acting upon me, and began to see it as a living mirror of my own consciousness. From that day on, I understood that nothing could come to me unless I had first, in some way, consented to it within. You may not remember giving that consent, for much of it is habitual, unconscious, learned in childhood, reinforced by the opinions of others. But the good news is, you can revoke any old assumption by adopting a new one. The moment you occupy a different state, the old one dies, and its world fades away. This is why I urge you to live more deliberately. Watch the feelings you nurture, the images you entertain, the inner conversations you rehearse. These are not idle fancies. They are the seeds of tomorrow's facts. Speak carefully in this silent tongue, for the universe never mishears you. You may ask, Neville, how do I know what state I am in? The answer is simple. Look at your world. It is the perfect mirror of your present consciousness. If you wish to know your future, look at what you are feeling now, for feeling is the cause, and the world is only the echo. Remember this truth always. Consciousness is the only reality. What you are conscious of being, you will inevitably express. Change your consciousness, and you change everything. There is no need to fight against circumstances or plead with fate. You need only awaken to the fact that you are already speaking, every moment, in the language the universe perfectly understands, the language of your inner state. For most of my life, before I understood this law, I was speaking the wrong language. I did not know it then, of course. I thought I was being reasonable, practical, even humble. But I was not speaking as a creator. I was speaking as a beggar. I prayed as a beggar. I worried as a beggar. I lived as though the kingdom of heaven was somewhere far away, when all along it was within me. You see, we have been taught since childhood to approach life as though we are separate from what we desire, as though we must earn blessings, persuade God, or prove ourselves worthy before good can come. But I tell you, you are not a servant in this universe. You are an heir. Everything you could ever want already belongs to you, waiting only for your recognition. When I first discovered that my imagination creates reality, I was shocked to realize how much of my inner language was made of complaint, fear, and doubt. I would worry about bills and then pray about bills. I would feel lack and then beg for abundance. I would ask for love while inwardly insisting that I was unloved. Can you see the contradiction? The universe was not punishing me. It was answering me faithfully, giving me exactly what I was saying in feeling I don't have it. Every complaint is a negative prayer. Every moment of worry is a command to the universe saying, continue this lack. You may not speak it aloud, but your feeling says it perfectly. When you worry about your health, you are not seeking healing. You are affirming sickness. When you fret over money, you are not calling abundance. You are strengthening the feeling of poverty. When you lament being alone, you are not inviting love. You are deepening loneliness. This is the tragedy of the human condition. We pray from the very state we wish to escape, and then wonder why nothing changes. We speak to the universe in the dialect of fear and then accuse it of silence. But the universe is never silent. It is perfectly obedient. It gives you the harvest of your inner speech, whether that speech is positive or negative. I remember once standing in line at a small shop in New York, listening to two men talk. One said, "I'm always unlucky. Every time I start something, it falls apart." The other nodded and replied, "Same here, my friend. That's life." And I thought to myself, these two men are praying. They do not know it, but they are offering their faith to misfortune. They are speaking to the universe, declaring, "We are unlucky." And the universe, as always, says, "Amen." I had done the same thing many times. I would say, "I can't find work. No one is hiring. I don't have the right background." And the world would mirror that belief perfectly. Each rejection letter, each closed door, was not life's cruelty. It was life's obedience. It was showing me my own words made visible. You see, the law does not judge. It does not decide what is good or bad. It simply reflects the language you speak in consciousness. The universe does not hear your pleas. It feels your state. If you pray as one who lacks, you will perpetuate lack. But if you pray as one who has, you will multiply abundance. Most people spend their entire lives praying from lack. They kneel and ask, "Please give me," but the feeling behind those words is, "I do not have." The true prayer, the prayer that moves mountains, begins not with asking, but with assuming. "Thank you, Father, that it is already done." When you truly assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, you are no longer begging. You are claiming what has been yours from the beginning. The difference is subtle but profound. The beggar pleads. The heir accepts. The beggar hopes. The heir knows. The beggar looks up to heaven. The heir looks within. You have spoken as a beggar long enough. I know, because I did the same. I would speak to God as though he were someone outside me, distant and reluctant to bless. But the day I realized that God was my own imagination, that he and I were one, everything changed. I stopped asking and began assuming. I stopped hoping and began knowing. From that moment, prayer became a joy. I no longer repeated anxious words. I entered into a state of peace, of quiet certainty, feeling that the thing desired was already accomplished. And then I watched again and again, as life rearranged itself to mirror that state. I remember one winter when I was struggling to pay rent. I would pace the room, muttering, "What am I going to do? I can't afford this." That inner conversation was my true prayer though I did not know it. And so life said, very well, you can't afford it, and confirmed my fear. Then, one evening, in exhaustion, I stopped. I sat on the edge of the bed and said to myself, Neville, you've been talking like a pauper. Talk now as one who already has enough. I closed my eyes and imagined the rent paid. I saw the receipt stamped paid in full. I heard my landlord's cheerful voice saying, thank you, Mr. Goddard. I felt the relief of being free from worry. That very week, unexpected money came to me through a channel I could never have planned. But you see, it was not the money that was the miracle. It was the shift in my language. The moment I stopped speaking lack, the universe had permission to express abundance. I tell you this so you may stop condemning yourself for what you see around you. The world is only your mirror. If you have been living as a beggar, you can begin today to live as an heir. The first step is to notice how you have been speaking. When you catch yourself complaining, do not scold yourself. Simply smile and say, there I go again, praying in reverse. Then change the feeling at once. Instead of saying, I'm tired of struggling, say within yourself, I live in ease. Instead of no one sees my worth, say I am valued and recognized. Instead of nothing ever works, say everything is unfolding beautifully. And more than saying it, feel it. Feel what it would be like if those words were true, and they will become true, for the universe cannot distinguish between what is felt as real and what is physically seen. Stop living as if the kingdom of heaven is closed to you. Stop begging for what already belongs to you. You are not a servant of fate. You are a son, a daughter of the infinite. You do not need to persuade the universe. You need only to remember who you are. Every complaint you utter is a seed. Every worry a command. Every fearful inner conversation a silent decree. Watch your speech, for the universe listens to your heart, not your mouth. And I assure you, if you change the inner language from one of pleading to one of possession, your world will change with it. You have spoken the wrong language long enough. Tonight, let that end. Speak as one who already has, already is, already knows, and the universe, faithful as ever, will echo back the words of your new tongue. When I speak of inner speech, I mean that quiet, continuous conversation you are having with yourself every waking moment. And even as you drift into sleep, you may not always hear it clearly, but it is there, shaping every event, every encounter, and every opportunity in your life. It is not merely a string of thoughts. It is the tone of being from which your world is born. Many years ago, I discovered that my outer world was nothing more than the visible record of my inner dialogue. What I whispered to myself in secret, life shouted aloud in facts. When I held silent arguments in my mind, those very quarrels appeared in my relationships. When I felt unappreciated and mentally complained of being overlooked, people around me began to treat me accordingly, as though they had overheard my thoughts. And when I quietly assumed the opposite, that I was valued, respected, and recognized, the behavior of those same people changed, often within days. Let me tell you of a simple experience. At one time, I worked in a small theater company. The man who managed it seemed cold, dismissive, and often sharp in his manner toward me. Each night, as I walked home, I would replay our interactions, feeling resentful and wronged. My inner speech was full of complaint. He doesn't appreciate me. He speaks to me with disdain. I thought I was merely thinking about him, but in truth I was creating him in my own image of injustice. Then one night, after a lecture, I decided to test this principle deliberately. I said to myself, if my world is myself pushed out, then I must change the conversation within me. That evening, instead of replaying the old argument, I imagined him shaking my hand warmly and saying, Neville, you've done a fine job. I felt the tone of kindness in his voice, the warmth of his hand, the ease between us. I repeated this little inner scene until it felt real. Within a week, his entire attitude changed. He greeted me one morning with a smile and said almost the exact words I had heard in imagination. From that day forward, we were on the best of terms. Did he change? Outwardly, yes. But inwardly, it was I who changed. I changed the conversation I was having about him. and he simply played his new role in response to the new script I had written. This is the secret of creation. The world is a stage, and every person you meet takes the part you assign to them in the private theater of your mind. Your inner speech is the playwright, and your outer world is the performance. You are always speaking inwardly, not in formal sentences, but in tones, moods, reactions. If you walk through the streets saying inwardly, "These people annoy me," you will meet annoyance at every corner. But if you move through the same streets with an inner tone of appreciation, "What a kind world this is. Everyone here helps me in some way," you will begin to meet kindness and help in the most unexpected places. I once knew a woman who constantly quarreled with her husband. She insisted he was unkind, selfish, impossible. I told her, "My dear, stop trying to change him in the flesh. Change him in your imagination." She protested, "But Neville, that's not real." And I said, "It is the only reality. The outer man is merely the shadow of the inner concept you hold." So she began to imagine nightly that her husband was tender, considerate, and full of love. She would hear him speak gently to her in imagination and feel his affection. Within a month, the transformation was remarkable. The man who had been bitter and harsh became loving and attentive. It was not that she had manipulated him, she had ceased creating him as the man she disliked. She changed her inner speech, and he had to respond, for he was only the mirror of her own assumption. Now, I want you to try a small exercise tonight. It is a gentle practice, but one that can change your life if you persist. I call it eavesdropping on your own inner talk. Throughout the day, catch yourself in moments of reaction, when someone speaks sharply, when a bill arrives, when you look in the mirror, when you think of your future. Stop for just a breath and listen. What are you saying inwardly right now? Not aloud, but silently. Perhaps you mutter, "I can't handle this," or "Nothing ever works out," or "I'm tired of this struggle." That is your real prayer. That is the command you are sending into the infinite. Do not condemn yourself when you hear it. Simply acknowledge it, as you would notice an old habit, and then replace it deliberately. If you find yourself saying, "I can't handle this," answer quietly, "Of course I can. I've already succeeded." If you catch yourself thinking, "I'm alone," whisper inwardly, "I am surrounded by love and friendship." And above all, feel the truth of the new sentence. The goal is not to silence your inner speech. That would be impossible, but to train it to speak from the end you desire. Soon you will find that the new language becomes natural. You will not have to force it. It will flow from you effortlessly. When I first began this work, I discovered how unkindly I spoke to myself. I called myself a failure, a fool, a man of small means. I said, "Neville, you've made a mistake again, or you'll never succeed." And life obediently confirmed it. When I learned to change my tone, to speak to myself as a man of worth, a man guided by divine wisdom, life too began to treat me as such. You see, your inner speech is not a monologue. It is a dialogue between the human and the divine in you. The words you whisper in imagination are heard by the deeper self, the subconscious, which is the doorway to the infinite. And that deeper self takes your words as literal commands. It arranges circumstances, inspires ideas, moves people, and draws events together to make your inner speech flesh. So I ask you tonight, what are you saying within yourself about your world, your family, your work, your health, your future? Because whatever you are saying now, you will soon see tomorrow. If you wish to change anything, begin here, not by struggling in the outer world, but by revising the conversation within. Stop arguing with shadows. Change the speaker. Assume the tone of one whose desire is already fulfilled, and let that inner voice speak with quiet authority. Then watch as life, faithful servant that it is, begins to echo your new conversation in the language of facts. People will begin to say the words you once only heard in imagination. Doors will open where there were none. Circumstances will conspire to honor your new inner word. Do not be surprised when it happens. Simply smile and remember, this too I once said in silence. I have said many times, and I say again with conviction, feeling is the secret. It is not imagination alone that creates, but imagination felt as real. You may see the most beautiful picture in your mind, but if it does not move you, if it does not carry within it the vibration of fulfillment, it remains only a shadow, a picture without life. It is feeling that gives imagination its creative power. You see, feeling is the universal language, the alphabet of creation. The universe does not respond to words or images. It responds to the tone of your emotion, the feeling of love, of joy, of gratitude, of accomplishment. These are living vibrations, the sacred language through which consciousness speaks itself into form. I remember when I first discovered this, I had read every book I could find, had tried to visualize perfectly, every detail, every scene, but my results were inconsistent. Sometimes they came to pass, and sometimes they did not. It puzzled me deeply. Then one night, while reading the Gospel of John, the word struck me with sudden clarity, and the word became flesh. I understood in that moment that the word meant not spoken language, but the emotional vibration behind the idea, the felt conviction of being. When a thought is clothed in feeling, it becomes creative. I began to test this. Instead of merely seeing my desire fulfilled, I began to feel it fulfilled. I let the picture sink into emotion. I asked myself, what would it feel like if this were true? Not, what would it look like or sound like, but what would it feel like to be the man I wish to be, to live the life I long to live? And something miraculous happened. My imaginal acts came alive. They stopped being faint, hollow scenes and became vivid, breathing experiences. When I felt the thrill of accomplishment, the gratitude of possession, the peace of being already there, things began to move in the outer world with a precision that defied reason. You see, the law of reversibility tells us that if a certain event in the world can produce a certain feeling in you, then the feeling itself, when deliberately created, can produce that event. The process works both ways. If hearing good news fills you with joy, then entering the feeling of joy before any news arrives must, by this law, bring about conditions that produce joyful results. That is the secret most people miss. They wait for the outer event to give them the feeling, never realizing that the feeling is the cause, not the effect. They say, I'll be happy when I find love, or I'll feel secure when I have money, or I'll relax when I am successful. But the universe hears only the vibration of lack, the unspoken confession. I do not yet have it. And so it continues to echo that state. But when you reverse the order, when you feel first, then life must rearrange itself to match the feeling. I once desired to be free from a difficult situation. The more I struggled, the tighter the chains seemed to grow. I prayed, visualized, planned, but my heart remained heavy. Then one evening, I stopped trying to fix the outer world and decided to work within. I asked myself quietly, if I were already free, how would I feel? I let the question sink in. Slowly, an emotion arose, lightness, relief, a calm certainty. I felt myself breathe differently. The body relaxed. I smiled without reason. I stayed in that state until it felt natural. Within a few weeks, circumstances I could not have designed unfolded perfectly, and I found myself free, not by struggle, but by feeling. That was when I understood deeply that the feeling of the wish fulfilled is the creative key. You must feel the end so completely that you forget the beginning. So let me share with you now a simple exercise, an art, really, that you can practice tonight. I call it entering the feeling of already done. Close your eyes wherever you are. Let the world fade for a moment. Choose one desire, something clear, something that matters to you deeply. Now, instead of wondering how it will come to pass, imagine it is already complete. The event is over. The wish has been fulfilled. Ask yourself, how would I feel if it were already true? Would you feel relief, gratitude, excitement, peace? Whatever it is, let that emotion rise naturally. Don't force it, invite it. See yourself as you would be if the desire were a present fact. Hear the voices congratulating you. Feel the satisfaction of accomplishment. Let the emotion fill your chest, your breath, your very being. Now this is the crucial part. Linger in that feeling. Let it become as familiar as your own skin. When you rise from this exercise, carry it with you into your day. Do not check for results. Do not question how. Simply rest in the feeling that it is already done. When you feel from the end, you summon the forces of creation to support that state. Every event, every meeting, every coincidence becomes the instrument through which your feeling expresses itself. If you could sustain the feeling of already having what you desire, even for a few minutes with true conviction, you would set into motion a chain of events that must, by law, crystallize into fact. Feeling is the bridge between imagination and reality. It is the sacred act of faith. You are not pretending, you are creating. So tonight, as you lie in bed, let your last thought be the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Feel it as though you were already living it. The world may not change overnight, but you will, and your world must follow. Remember, the event and the feeling are two sides of the same coin. The feeling precedes the fact, and the fact confirms the feeling. Do not wait for life to give you permission to feel. Begin now, and life will have no choice but to echo your emotion in visible form. Everything you long for, love, success, freedom, peace, exists already as a frequency, and that frequency is emotion. Speak to the universe in that tongue, and you will find that the universe answers swiftly, faithfully, and with wonder. So tonight, forget the question of when. Enter the feeling of now. The feeling of already done is the key that opens every door. Every moment of your life, you are clothed in an invisible garment, a state of consciousness. This state is your true identity at that moment, and it determines everything that happens to you. You do not attract what you want. You attract what you are being. Your world faithfully mirrors the state you occupy. Most people live unaware of this great truth. They imagine themselves to be at the mercy of circumstances, luck, or the actions of others. They say, when I get that job, then I'll feel confident. Or when I meet the right person, then I'll feel loved. But it is never the event that determines the feeling, it is the state of being from which the event emerges. When I speak of a state, I mean a way of seeing and feeling yourself in relation to the world. You can move from one state to another as easily as changing your coat. There are infinite states of wealth and poverty, of health and illness, of freedom and bondage. The secret is to recognize that you are not any of these states. You are the one who occupies them. In my own life, I have worn many such garments. There was a time I lived as a beggar in consciousness. I felt small, limited, unseen by the world. I looked at successful men and thought, they are lucky. They have something I do not. I prayed to God for help, not realizing that my prayer was the cry of a beggar asking for crumbs when the entire feast was already mine. But the day came when I understood that I had been living in the wrong state, the state of lack. And that state, like every other, had its own natural laws. From that state, everything I touched turned to struggle. Every door seemed to close. Then, through the grace of awareness, I began to experiment. I asked myself, what if I truly am the son, not the servant? What if I already possess what I have been begging for? And for the first time, I began to live from the state of being the son. I would walk the streets of New York and feel that everything I saw belonged to me, not in ownership, but in consciousness. The lights, the sounds, the very air seemed to respond to me. I was no longer the outsider looking in. I was the heir walking through my own estate. My words changed. My posture changed. Even the rhythm of my walk changed. And naturally, my world changed with it. You see, every state has its own atmosphere, its own behavior, its own tone of voice, its own reactions. When you are in the state of lack, you act, think, and feel as a person who lacks. You may say, I am grateful, but the tone is one of fear. When you occupy the state of abundance, you need not even speak. Your silence radiates confidence and ease. Let me give you a story that will help you see how simple this is. A woman once came to me, deeply troubled. Her husband had left her, and she wanted desperately to restore their relationship. She said, Neville, I've tried affirmations, I've tried praying, but nothing changes. I asked her, tell me honestly, what state do you fall asleep in each night? She looked down and said, in sadness, in loneliness. I keep thinking of how empty the bed feels. I told her, my dear, that is the state you are perpetuating. You are lying in bed as the abandoned woman, and life must continue to echo that identity. Tonight, I want you to do something different. As you lie in bed, imagine the feeling of being cherished, of being embraced, not hoping for it, being it. Feel his arm around you, his voice beside you. Don't see his face. Feel the reality of being loved. Fall asleep in that state. She did. Night after night, she practiced this feeling of being the beloved, not the forsaken. Weeks later, she returned to me, radiant. Neville, she said, it's the strangest thing. I don't know how to explain it, but I feel loved all the time now. And my husband has written to me, asking to see me again. I smiled, for I knew it could be no other way. She had moved from the state of rejection to the state of love, and her world had simply followed her there. Another man came to me years ago, a salesman, who said, I've lost all my clients. I can't seem to make a sale. No one listens to me. I asked him to describe how he felt during the day. He said, I feel defeated before I even begin. I expect people to say no. So I told him, you are living in the state of failure, and that state must produce its own kind. You must leave that state behind. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, imagine that you've just returned home after a very successful day. Feel the satisfaction, the ease, the gratitude. Hear someone saying, that was an incredible day for you. Feel the weight of the wallet in your pocket, the security of knowing your success is certain. He did exactly that. Within a month, his results transformed. He began to make sales effortlessly. His confidence grew, and he told me later, Neville, it was as if I became a different man. The same name, but a new being. That is precisely the point. He did not attract success. He became success by moving into the state where success was natural. You can never create anything that is foreign to your state. A beggar cannot imagine abundance and receive it, for the beggar's very identity contradicts it. He must become the son, one who knows the inheritance is already his. Now I say to you, it is not difficult to move between states. It does not require years of struggle or effort. It is a simple shift in feeling, from hoping to knowing, from wanting to being. The moment you identify yourself differently, the world begins to rearrange itself around that new identity. Imagine yourself tonight as you wish to be, not trying to get there, but already there. Walk in that consciousness, speak from it. React to the world as that person would, and you will see the evidence of that new state appearing in ways that seem miraculous, though they are perfectly natural. Remember, you are not trying to change the world. You are changing the garment you wear in consciousness. The outer world is only the mirror reflecting your inner attire. Move from the rags of the beggar to the robe of the sun. Walk not as one pleading for blessings, but as one blessing the world with his being. The Son does not ask, will I receive? He knows, all that the Father hath is mine. Once you make this inner transition, you will notice a profound peace. You will no longer chase or beg. You will rest in the assurance that everything flows from who you are being. So tonight, when you close your eyes, ask yourself not, what do I want, but who am I being? And if the answer is still the beggar, then gently, lovingly, step into the state of the sun. Feel it, own it, sleep in it. And I promise you, the world will soon rise to greet you as its rightful heir. There is a sacred moment each day, a brief and quiet threshold when the conscious and the subconscious meet. It is that soft, hazy borderland between waking and sleep, the moment when the body grows heavy, the mind drifts, and the outer world begins to dissolve. This is what I call the state akin to sleep, and it is the golden doorway to creation. In this state, your conscious mind relaxes its grip, and the deeper part of you, the creative power that shapes all reality, becomes receptive. Whatever you impress upon it at this moment, it will faithfully express in your world. It is the fertile soil of the universe, waiting for the seed of your feeling. When I discovered this, I realized that prayer had been misunderstood for centuries. True prayer is not a repetition of words, nor the act of pleading with some faraway deity. It is a quiet inward assumption, and knowing that the thing desired is already accomplished. And the most powerful time to make this assumption is just before sleep, when you hover between the seen and the unseen. Let me tell you how I came to understand this truth. Many years ago, I was living in a small apartment, longing to travel, to lecture, to share what I had learned, but the means seemed absent. One evening, instead of worrying about the how, I decided to experiment with this state. As I lay in bed, my body relaxed, but my mind remained gently alert. I imagined myself standing on a platform before an audience. I could feel the warmth of the lights on my face, hear the sound of my own voice, see the faint outline of faces before me. I didn't try to make the picture perfect. I only sought to feel its reality. I felt the satisfaction of speaking truth and the joy of being heard. And then I drifted into sleep, still feeling that it was true. Weeks later, invitations began to arrive, one after another. People I had never met were asking me to speak, and soon I was traveling and lecturing across the country. It came as naturally as the dawn follows night. You see, in that borderland of sleep, the conscious reasoning mind grows quiet, and what remains is the language of feeling. The subconscious does not argue, question, or doubt. It simply receives the impression and gives it life. That is why it is so vital to guard your thoughts as you fall asleep. The images and emotions you carry into sleep are the blueprint for tomorrow's reality. Now let me explain how to use this power. Each night as you prepare for bed, lie down comfortably and allow your body to relax. Do not force yourself into stillness. Simply let go, as though sinking gently into the bed. Your eyelids grow heavy, your breath slows, and you begin to drift. At this moment, your mind is open, more open than at any other time of day. Now, instead of reviewing the troubles of the day or planning tomorrow's tasks, choose one desire, something you long to experience as already fulfilled. It might be a healed body, a loving relationship, financial ease, or the joy of accomplishment. But choose one thing and let your whole attention rest upon it. Construct a simple scene that implies its fulfillment. Do not imagine the process, imagine the result. If you desire success, imagine yourself shaking hands with a friend who says congratulations. If you desire love, imagine hearing someone whisper, I adore you. If you desire freedom, imagine the feeling of walking out of a place that once confined you. Keep it simple, clear, and short, something you can easily replay in your imagination. Then enter into that scene as though it were happening now. You are not watching it, you are in it. Feel the texture of the world around you. Hear the sounds, smell the air. Sense the weight of your body in that moment of fulfillment. Above all, feel the satisfaction that it is already accomplished. Let that emotion sink deep into your being. As you drift towards sleep, do not let go of the feeling. If your mind wanders, gently bring it back. The aim is not to force, but to surrender, to fall asleep in the state of the wish fulfilled. This is not mere imagination. It is the act of creation. For the subconscious mind, which never sleeps, receives that feeling and begins to weave it into the fabric of your world. You may not see results immediately, but something will have shifted. Circumstances will begin to arrange themselves. New ideas will arise. People will appear at the right moment. It may come so naturally that you forget you once called it a miracle. I tell my students always, never fall asleep in the state of lack. If you must think of something before sleep, let it be the feeling of your dream already realized. Sleep as though it were true, and your subconscious will make it so. The ancient scripture says, you shall decree a thing, and it shall be established unto you. Your decree is not spoken with the lips, but with the feeling you carry into the depths of rest. That is the true prayer, the silent, emotional decree impressed upon the mind of creation. I have used this method countless times, for every kind of desire. When I wished to leave the island of Barbados with no money for passage, I imagined myself in New York, feeling the cold wind on my face, hearing the city sounds. I fell asleep in that state night after night, and within days, events unfolded to carry me there, even though every rational means seemed impossible. So I say to you, if you can feel it as real, you can make it real. The borderland of sleep is your most powerful moment of the day. It is the sacred bridge between imagination and reality. Use it wisely. Tonight, instead of falling asleep to the voice of worry or memory, fall asleep to the voice of fulfillment. Whisper silently to yourself, it is done, I am. Feel it, believe it. Let that feeling cradle you as you drift away. And when you awaken tomorrow, you will rise renewed. Not because the outer world has changed yet, but because you have changed. And soon, the world will mirror that inner transformation perfectly. So remember this, every night you speak to the infinite. The question is, in what tone? Speak in the language of completion, and the universe will echo back your words in the form of life, made new. When people hear me speak of imagination and feeling, they often say, Neville, must I do this only before sleep? And I answer, no, my dear friend. The true mastery begins in waking life. You are not to speak to the universe only once a day. You are to live in constant conversation with it. Every step, every breath, every small reaction is a message sent to creation itself. You are never not speaking. Even in silence, your inner tone declares who you believe yourself to be. And so, to speak correctly to the universe means to live each moment as the one whose wish is already fulfilled. It means to walk, breathe, and act from the end, not toward it. When I first began to live this way, I noticed how habitually I contradicted my own desires. I would imagine abundance at night and then complain about lack by morning. I would assume success in meditation and then speak of struggle over breakfast. Without realizing it, I was undoing the work of my own imagination. Then I discovered something powerful, the mental diet. It is not a diet of food, but of thought and speech. Just as you would not feed your body poison, you must not feed your mind with words of defeat, doubt, or fear. Every inner sentence is nourishment for your reality. If you fill the day with complaints, regrets, or worries, do not be surprised when life mirrors them back to you. So I began to discipline myself, not harshly, but gently, like a gardener tending a sacred soil. Each time I caught myself thinking, this is difficult, I replaced it with, everything flows easily for me. When I found myself saying, I can't afford that, I changed it to, money flows naturally into my life. If someone spoke to me of failure, I no longer joined in sympathy. I listened with compassion, but silently affirmed, he is blessed, successful, guided. Soon my world began to change, not by force, but by harmony. People responded differently. Money came more freely. The air itself seemed lighter. To live this way is to make your entire day a living prayer. When you walk down the street, walk as the fulfilled one. Move with quiet confidence, as though you already possess what you once desired. When you breathe, breathe as one at peace, knowing all is unfolding perfectly. When you speak, speak from completion. If someone asks, how are things going? Do not reply from the old state. Don't say, I'm waiting for things to get better. Say instead, everything is moving beautifully. Not as a lie, but as an inner decision. Because when you answer from the end, you are aligning yourself with the truth of being. When you handle money, whether it is much or little, do so as a master, not a servant. Treat every coin, every note, as a symbol of abundance, a friend returning home. Never clutch it in fear or spend it in guilt. Bless it as it leaves you, and it will bless you as it returns. I remember when I had very little, I would hold each coin with reverence and whisper inwardly, you are divine substance taking visible form. Soon that invisible wealth took on greater and greater form until I no longer feared the flow of life. When setbacks come, and they will, do not fall back into the old language of defeat. You may feel the old emotion rise up, but pause and breathe. Remind yourself, this too is part of the pattern fulfilling my desire. The one who has already succeeded does not panic at the sight of a delay. He knows every appearance is temporary, and all things are working together for his good. So how do you begin this way of life? By observing your inner tone as often as you can, not obsessively, but lovingly. Ask yourself throughout the day, from what state am I responding right now? When you speak to someone, when you look at a bill, when you glance in the mirror, notice the inner voice. Is it the beggar speaking or the sun? Is it the voice of lack or of possession? If you find the old voice speaking, do not scold yourself. Simply change it. The shift can be instantaneous. You can stop in the middle of a sentence and begin again from the new state. The universe does not care how many times you fell asleep in the wrong story. It only responds to who you are now. Let me share a small example from my own life. There was a time when I had to pay a bill that exceeded what I had in my pocket. The old Neville would have worried, but I reminded myself, I am the sun, not the beggar. My supply is infinite. I felt a calm gratitude and said aloud, it is paid. I acted as one who already possessed enough. Within 2 days, a completely unexpected opportunity brought me the exact sum I needed. I did not earn it. Also became the man who naturally receives. That is the great secret. You do not fix your world, you fix your tone. You begin to act, think, and feel as the fulfilled one. Make your entire day a rehearsal of the state you chose the night before. Walk as the person you imagined yourself to be. Answer every question as that person would. Handle every coin, every object, every conversation from that identity. Soon, you will find that you are no longer pretending. You are it. The law is simple but unyielding. What you are being now, you are continually creating. There is no pause, no neutral state. Every thought, every breath, every glance is part of the dialogue between you and the infinite. So guard your inner language. Keep your words pure, your tone gentle, your feeling high. Speak to the universe as a friend, not as a servant, begging for favor. And as you do, you will find that all creation begins to speak back, in circumstances, in coincidences, in blessings, so natural they seem effortless. Remember, it is not about doing more. It is about being differently. Live each day as one who already stands at the summit, and the path beneath your feet will shape itself accordingly. Walk as the fulfilled one. Breathe as the fulfilled one. Speak as the fulfilled one. And soon, without fanfare or struggle, your world will echo back your every word, spoken in silence, yet heard by all creation. One of the most liberating, yet challenging truths I ever discovered is this: everyone is you pushed out. Every person who enters your life, every word they speak, every action they take toward you, is but the visible echo of your inner assumptions about them. You may believe they have their own independent will, and indeed they do within their own sphere. Yet in relation to you, they can only mirror the concept you hold of them. When I first encountered this truth, I resisted it. Surely, I thought, other people are separate. Surely they act from their own nature. But as I began to observe life more closely, I saw that my relationships were not random at all. They were perfect reflections of my inner speech. Those I believed to be kind were kind to me. Those I judged harshly mirrored back my judgment. Those I secretly feared would betray me inevitably did. This realization was both humbling and empowering. It meant that no one could truly harm me, for I was the one authoring every encounter. It also meant that if I wished to change how someone behaved toward me, I need not plead with them or manipulate circumstances. I had only to change my assumption of them to rewrite the conversation I was having about them in my own mind. Let me tell you a story from my own life. Years ago, I had a friend with whom my relationship had grown strained. He had become distant and critical. Each time I thought of him, I would replay our last disagreement, feeling the sting of his words. I did not realize that I was feeding that version of him into existence. My inner talk about him was one long complaint, and he faithfully played his part. One evening, I decided to apply the law consciously. I said to myself, if he is me pushed out, then the fault is not his. I have been holding him in the wrong state. I closed my eyes and imagined him standing before me. I heard his voice in a new tone, warm, friendly, affectionate. I imagined him saying, "Neville, I'm so glad we've reconnected. You've always been an inspiration to me." I repeated this scene several times until it felt real. I felt love, not resentment. I fell asleep that night, hearing his imagined voice in my mind. A few days later, a letter arrived from him, the first in months. In it he wrote, "I don't know why, but I suddenly felt the urge to write to you. I've been thinking of our friendship and how much it's meant to me." The very words I had imagined, nearly verbatim. That day, I learned more about the law than in all the books I had read before. You see, when you change the way you think of another, you send out a new vibration that their deeper self must respond to. They are not consciously aware of it, but the energy of your assumption shapes the part they play in your world. If you think of someone as unkind, you are summoning unkindness from them. If you think of them as generous, you are calling forth their generosity. The universe rearranges itself according to your belief. This is why it is so essential to revise your inner conversations about others. Most of us spend our days mentally arguing, criticizing, or explaining ourselves to imaginary versions of people. We replay old hurts, imagine confrontations, or anticipate rejection. Each time we do, we are impressing those assumptions upon the subconscious, and it must outpicture them in our interactions. So I began a new practice, one I encourage you to adopt. Whenever a negative thought of someone arises, I stop it at once and replace it with a loving assumption. If someone seems hostile, I say inwardly, he is kind and understanding. If someone seems unreliable, I say, she is steady and faithful. And more than words, I feel it to be true. I imagine them smiling, cooperative, at peace. This simple act of revision transforms relationships, for you are not changing them. You are changing your inner image of them, and as surely as night follows day, they will conform to that new image. I recall a woman who once attended my lectures. She was bitter toward her employer, who she said treated her unfairly. I told her, my dear, you must stop rehearsing that story in your mind. See him differently. Imagine him praising you, thanking you for your good work. She was skeptical, but she tried. Every morning as she walked to the office, she imagined him greeting her warmly and expressing appreciation. Within 2 weeks, she came to me astonished. Neville, she said, he's changed completely. He compliments me, he's kind. It's as though he's become a different man. He had not changed. She had. She had finally spoken to the universe in the correct tone, through her assumptions of love instead of resentment. You see, everyone in your world is an aspect of your own consciousness made visible. The way they act toward you is the reflection of your own belief about who they are and what they think of you. When you understand this, blame disappears. Forgiveness becomes effortless, for there is nothing to forgive. You simply adjust your inner language, and harmony returns. Now I will give you a small exercise. Tonight, before sleep, think of one person with whom you wish to have a better relationship. Bring their face before you in imagination. See them as radiant, peaceful, kind. Hear them speaking words of love or respect. Feel within yourself the emotion of reconciliation, of mutual understanding. Do not try to force the outer change. Simply persist in the new inner scene until it feels natural. When you awake tomorrow, treat them inwardly, as though that change has already taken place. If the outer world still shows the old behavior, do not react. Hold steady to your new assumption. Remember, the world lags behind your consciousness. It is a delayed reflection, but it will catch up, inevitably. You will know this law is working when you no longer feel the need to defend yourself. You will walk in peace, knowing that your world is simply you pushed out. When someone acts harshly, you will not curse them. You will bless them and silently say, I see you differently now. And soon enough, the new version of them will appear. So speak lovingly of others, not only aloud, but in the privacy of your imagination. For the universe listens there most intently. Let your inner language toward others be one of grace, appreciation, and peace. And life will echo those tones in every encounter. Everyone you meet is an actor in the grand play of your own creation. Change the script within, and the cast will change their lines accordingly. That is the divine mystery of everyone is you pushed out. There comes a moment in every man's journey with the law when the outer world seems to contradict everything he knows to be true. He has imagined, he has felt, he has prayed, yet nothing appears to move. It is in this moment that one's faith is truly tested. For faith, my friend, is not the ability to believe when things look promising. Faith is loyalty to the unseen assumption, even when every appearance denies it. When I speak of faith, I do not mean blind optimism or a fragile hope. I mean a deep inner conviction, a steadfast knowing that your unseen word, once spoken in feeling, must be made visible. To doubt it is to dig up the seed before it has taken root. You must remain loyal to your invisible act, just as a gardener trusts the life within the buried seed. I remember once desiring a particular opportunity that seemed completely out of reach. I had done all that reason could do. Every door appeared closed. And one night I said to myself, if imagination creates reality, then it does not matter how things appear. So I entered into the feeling of my wish fulfilled. I saw it done. I felt it done. I thanked the unseen power within me for its completion. Then, in the days that followed, I did something most people cannot. I ignored the evidence of my senses. When the world said, no, I inwardly said, it is done. When people doubted, I smiled and thought, they cannot yet see what I know. I did not allow the outer world to dictate my inner conviction. And as always, life conformed, quietly, naturally, through a chain of events, so ordinary that had I not known the law, I might have dismissed them as coincidence. This is what I call the bridge of incidents. It is the natural path the world takes to fulfill your assumption. Once you have impressed your desire upon the subconscious, it sets into motion countless unseen currents. People meet, letters are written, decisions are made, all without your conscious interference. And when the result arrives, it seems perfectly logical. You may say, well, that would have happened anyway. But I assure you, it would not have, had you not assumed it in consciousness first. The bridge of incidents rarely looks miraculous. It is made of ordinary steps, familiar faces, small adjustments that seem to lead you by chance to your desired end. But behind that ordinariness is the hand of the divine imagination, working in perfect silence. Now the challenge comes when time passes and nothing appears to change. This is where most people fall back into doubt. They begin to say, perhaps I did it wrong. Perhaps this does not work. And by doing so, they abandon their assumption before it can bear fruit. I have seen many people undo their own miracles in this way. They imagine a new state, they feel it for a night or two, and when they wake to the same conditions, they grow discouraged. They think the law has failed them, but the law cannot fail. It is the mind that wavers. I tell you this plainly. Ignore appearances. Train yourself to look beyond the surface. When nothing seems to change, it is changing. The invisible has already accepted your command, and the visible world is catching up. The seed does not sprout the instant it is planted, but if you disturb the soil every day to check on it, you will kill its growth. So what should you do when nothing seems to happen? You do the hardest and simplest thing. You remain faithful. You return again and again to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. You rest in it. You remind yourself it is already done. And you live as though it were so. When I was young, I often tested this law by imagining small, specific things. A letter from a friend, a certain phrase spoken by someone, a gift arriving unexpectedly. Sometimes they came at once, sometimes weeks passed, but they always came, without fail. And in that waiting, I learned the sacred art of trust. Faith is loyalty to the unseen reality. It is turning away from the visible evidence and standing firm in your conviction. It is to walk through the storm while saying inwardly, the sun is shining. It is to smile at rejection, knowing it is but a shadow passing before the true light. Once, I wanted to move into a particular apartment. It was far beyond what I could afford. The agent told me, impossible. It's already taken. But I had learned my lesson well. I went home and lived in imagination, as though I already resided there. I arranged the furniture in my mind, felt the keys in my hand, and fell asleep each night in that assumption. I refused to argue with appearances. 2 weeks later, the agent called. Mr. Goddard, he said, you won't believe this, but the previous applicant withdrew and the rent has been reduced. It's yours if you still want it. I laughed softly, for I knew the law had worked, not through magic, but through faith. Do not be deceived by appearances. What you see now is simply the shadow of old thoughts, old feelings. Give them time to fade. Continue speaking the new word, quietly and confidently. When doubt comes, and it will, do not wrestle with it. Replace it, return to your end, and rest there. Faith is not strain. It is not loud or anxious. It is a calm certainty, like the stillness of a mountain. The world may roar, but the one who knows remains unmoved. If you can hold to your invisible assumption long enough, the bridge of incidents will carry you gently to its fulfillment. The people and events necessary for its expression will arise naturally, in perfect sequence. And when the miracle arrives, and it will, you will see how quietly the power works. You will say, as I have said so many times, I could not have planned this better myself. So I urge you, tonight and every night, speak your word. Feel it as real, and then rest. Do not look for signs. Do not demand proof. The proof is in the peace you feel when you know it is done. The outer world will follow in its own good time. Remain loyal to the invisible word, and the visible must obey. There is a marvelous secret I have shared with only those who were ready to hear it. The secret of revision. It is the power to change your past by changing the story you tell yourself about it. Now some may scoff at this and say, "But Neville, the past is fixed. What's done is done." To that I reply, only if you continue to remember it the same way. The past lives not in events, but in your memory of those events. And memory is imagination, which is the creative power itself. You see, the universe does not obey what happened. It obeys your interpretation of what happened. Your present state of consciousness, not the record of time, determines your reality. If you reinterpret the past, you alter its meaning, and that new meaning begins to reshape your present and your future. I discovered this truth in a most personal way. Many years ago, I had an experience that left me feeling betrayed. For weeks, I carried that wound in my heart, replaying the scene over and over. What was said, how I had been wronged. Each night, I fell asleep rehearsing my pain, and each morning I awoke to new reasons to justify it, until one evening I asked myself, what if I could rewrite that event? So I closed my eyes and returned in imagination to the scene. I saw the same place, the same faces, but this time I changed the tone. I imagined the person speaking to me with kindness, gratitude, even affection. I felt myself responding with warmth and understanding. I repeated this new version until I could feel it as real, until the old emotion dissolved completely. I fell asleep in that feeling. The next day, I awoke lighter, freer, and over the following week, something remarkable occurred. The person who had wronged me reached out, not to defend themselves, but to apologize and restore harmony. It was as though the universe had revised itself to match my new memory. But of course, it was not the world that had changed. It was I. I had rewritten the inner script, and the outer scene obeyed. This is the essence of revision. Every night before you sleep, you revisit the day. You look at each event that disturbed you, each conversation that carried tension or regret. Then, in imagination, you rewrite it. See it play out as you wish it had. Hear the words you long to hear. Feel the peace, the laughter, the satisfaction that was missing. Do not merely think about it. Feel it. Feel the relief of harmony restored. Feel the warmth of forgiveness, the ease of completion. And then, as you drift into sleep, let that be the final impression upon your mind. Your subconscious does not distinguish between what really happened and what you imagine with emotion. It takes the new story as truth, and from that truth, it begins to rearrange your world. The next morning, you awaken in a slightly different universe, one that reflects your revised assumption. I have taught this practice to countless students, and their stories are nothing short of miraculous. One woman, who quarreled daily with her husband, began to revise each argument before sleep. Instead of replaying harsh words, she imagined them laughing together, understanding one another, holding hands. Within a month, her husband's demeanor softened completely. He himself did not know why, but she did. She had changed the past that gave birth to his behavior. Another man had been rejected for a position he deeply desired. Each night, he relived the interview, not as a failure, but as a success. He imagined the interviewer shaking his hand, congratulating him, saying, "We'd be honored to have you." Within weeks, he received an unexpected letter. The candidate they had chosen had withdrawn, and the position was his. He said to me, "Neville, it was as if the first interview never happened." And in a sense, it hadn't, for he had rewritten it in the only place that matters, his own consciousness. You must understand, my friend, that nothing is truly fixed until you decide it is. The so-called past is but the record of your old assumptions, and those assumptions live within you now. Change the assumption, and the record changes. When you practice revision, you are not pretending. You are selecting a higher truth, one that aligns with your divine imagination. The universe, being but the reflection of your inner state, must then conform to that truth. You can even go beyond daily events. You can revise entire chapters of your life. If there is something in your childhood, your youth, or your recent years that continues to haunt you, return to it in imagination. Rewrite it as it should have been. Hear the words of love that were never spoken. Feel the success that once eluded you. Replace the sorrow with joy, the rejection with acceptance. Do this sincerely, and you will discover that the chains of memory begin to fall away. I remember a man who once told me he had grown up feeling unloved by his father. It colored every relationship he had. I said, go back in imagination. See your father as kind, proud, affectionate. Hear him say, son, I love you. You make me proud. He did this for several nights, though at first it felt false. Then something shifted. He said he awoke one morning with tears of joy, feeling, for the first time, at peace with his father. Weeks later, a letter arrived from the man's aged father, a letter of love and reconciliation. The outer world had bowed to his inner revision. You see, when you change the feeling about the past, you free the energy trapped in it. That energy returns to you as vitality, opportunity, and harmony. The world outside adjusts to the new vibration within. So each night, make revision your sacred ritual. Before sleep, review the day, not as a judge, but as a creator. Change what needs changing. Forgive what needs forgiving. Bless what needs blessing. Then close the day in peace, knowing that you have redeemed it. When you awaken in the morning, you will find that your world has softened. People will act differently. Circumstances will rearrange, and events that once felt immovable will begin to yield. You will realize, as I did, that the past was never your prison, it was your canvas. And you, my friend, are the painter. There comes a time, my friend, when the seeker must look beyond the desire for things, beyond the pursuit of manifestations, success, or recognition, and begin to ask a far greater question. Who am I, that all these things should obey me? For the law, as I have taught it, is but the lower level of the great mystery. It is the tool by which man learns that imagination creates reality. But the promise is the revelation of who the imagination truly is. The law allows you to shape the shadows of life. The promise reveals that you are the light casting them. In the early years of my teaching, I focused on the law. I taught men and women how to imagine wisely, how to feel the wish fulfilled, how to revise their past and speak the inner language of the universe. I watched countless lives transform, fortunes restored, health renewed, relationships healed. But after many such miracles, I began to see that the true purpose of these outer changes was not to make life more comfortable, but to awaken man to his divine nature. For every fulfilled desire, every answered prayer, is a whisper from within saying, do you see, it is I doing this, and I am you. The law trains you to use imagination deliberately. The promise reveals that your imagination is God. When I say, I and my Father are one, I do not speak in poetry or mysticism. I speak of a literal truth. The creative power you call imagination is none other than the eternal Christ within you, the only begotten of the Father, sleeping in every man until he awakes. In those quiet hours of contemplation, I would sometimes marvel at how gently life had led me from seeking things to seeking truth. At first, I was eager to manifest, to prove that thought creates reality, but each success only deepened my reverence. I began to see that the same power that brought me a home, a friendship, a door opened in the world, was the very power that calls the dead to life and things that are not as though they were. It is the same power that formed the world itself, not distant, not abstract, but intimate, breathing through your every thought and feeling. You see, the language of the universe, the language of feeling, assumption, and inner knowing, is the language of God within you. When you speak it consciously, you are communing with the divine in its purest form. Prayer, then, is not the petition of a servant to a master, but the inner conversation of the Creator with himself. When I discovered this, I could no longer think of imagination as something small or human. I knew then that what I had been teaching as manifestation was, in truth, a rehearsal for divine realization. By learning to assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, man learns the first steps of creation, the same creative act his Father performs eternally. But beyond the law lies the promise, that glorious moment when man's imagination reveals itself as God, and he knows himself to be one with the eternal being, who dream the world into being. This is why I say to you, use the law faithfully, but do not stop there. Let every fulfilled desire, every demonstration, point you homeward to the recognition that the power that answers your imagination is not separate from you. It is you. When you desire a thing and imagine it with feeling, it appears. But when you no longer need to imagine, because you have realized that all things proceed from you, you live in perfect rest. You no longer strive to get. You simply are. There was a night when this truth descended upon me like a wave of light. I had been lying quietly, reflecting on the words, "Be still and know that I am God." Suddenly, it was as if the I expanded beyond measure, no longer confined to this body, but vast, infinite, the source of every heartbeat, every star. I knew, not believed, but knew that I was one with the Father, not Neville, the man, but the eternal I am, that is life itself. From that moment, my understanding of the law changed forever. I saw that all the techniques, all the methods, were but shadows pointing to this realization. We imagine to remember who we are. We feel to awaken the sleeping God within. When you speak the language of the universe, the language of imagination, feeling, and faith, you are speaking to your own divine self. You are reminding the infinite of its own forgotten dream. Every desire fulfilled, every obstacle overcome is the echo of that conversation. And when at last you truly know that the voice that commands and the power that obeys are one and the same, you will live in effortless harmony. You will still imagine, still feel, still create, but no longer as a seeker, rather as the one who knows. The world will continue to mirror your consciousness, as it always has, but you will no longer fear its changes. For you will know yourself to be the dreamer, and all the dream, in every part, will reveal the face of the dreamer himself. So I tell you, the law and the promise are not separate. The law is the schoolmaster that leads you to the promise. You begin by manifesting small things, a letter, a promotion, a healing, and end by realizing that you and your Father are one. The true reward of speaking the language of the universe is not the things it brings, but the remembrance of the divine voice from which that language flows. In that remembrance, desire itself fades into peace, for you no longer wish to possess anything. You already are all things. And so, my beloved friends, use this knowledge wisely. Imagine boldly, feel deeply, create joyfully, but let every act of creation be a stepping stone toward the only realization worth having, that the one speaking and the one answering have always been the same. When you know this, truly know it, you will have found the kingdom, not in some distant heaven, but within yourself. Now, before we part tonight, I would like to leave you with something more than words. A practice, a living ritual you can carry into your own experience. For knowledge without use is barren, but knowledge applied becomes power, and power applied with love becomes wisdom. So let us prepare together for a short journey, a guided exercise I call speaking the language of the universe. You may close your eyes if you wish, or simply soften your gaze. Breathe deeply and let the air move through you gently. Feel yourself here, but also beyond this room, beyond this moment, in the vast stillness of awareness. Now bring to mind something you desire, not a desperate wish, but a quiet longing of the heart. It might be peace in your home, health restored, love deepened, or abundance unfolding naturally. Whatever it may be, allow it to rise before you like a scene from a dream. See yourself as the one who already lives in the fulfillment of that desire, not striving, not waiting, but living it. Now, feel the ease in your body, the calm in your breath. Sense the satisfaction of a wish accomplished. Let gratitude well up from within, not as an effort, but as a natural response to knowing that it is done. Now, hear the inner language of that fulfillment. What does it sound like? Perhaps you hear someone congratulating you. Perhaps you hear your own voice quietly saying, "Of course, this was always mine." Whatever you hear, let it be gentle, simple, believable. The universe does not respond to many words, but to the tone of being. Now, feel that tone. Feel it as though it hums through every cell of your being, that deep inner knowing, I am the one who already is. This is the language of the universe, the vibration of certainty, peace, and love. Remain here for a moment, resting in that feeling. If stray thoughts come, let them pass. You are not commanding the universe as a servant. You are speaking to your own divine self as a beloved companion. Whisper inwardly, "Thank you, Father," for that is the most sacred phrase in creation. The recognition that your prayer has been heard and answered before it was spoken. And now, as you prepare to sleep tonight, take these affirmations with you. Do not repeat them mechanically. Let them sink into your heart like warm light into water. I am the one who speaks the language of the universe, and it always answers. My imagination is the voice of God within me. I live in the end, and all things move to make it visible. Feeling is my prayer, and I feel that it is done. I rest in the certainty that my word shall not return to me void. All that I desire already exists within me. I and my Father are one. Say these words softly, perhaps only in thought, as you drift towards sleep. For sleep is not an ending, but a sacred doorway, the threshold where the conscious and subconscious meet, where the inner word becomes flesh. As you lie there, see your desired state as though it were happening now. Feel the bed beneath you, as though it were the bed of your fulfilled self. Hear the quiet hum of a world already transformed by your assumption. You need not force anything. Your work is done. You have spoken the language of creation, and the universe has heard you. Fall asleep as the fulfilled one. Let the feeling of completion be your lullaby. And when you awaken tomorrow, do not search for signs. Be the sign. Walk, speak, and move through the day as one who knows that life is already unfolding according to your inner decree. Do not beg, do not question. Simply trust the unseen hand that arranges all things in perfect order. Remember, this teaching is not meant to be admired, but to be tested. The truth of imagination can only be proven by your own experience. So tonight, when the lights are low, and the world grows quiet, I invite you to make this living experiment. Choose one simple desire, something small enough to believe, yet meaningful enough to matter, and speak it to yourself in the language of feeling. Enter into its fulfillment in imagination. Feel the joy of it, the peace, the naturalness. Then release it and fall asleep in that state. Do not wonder how it will come. The bridge of incidents will unfold, quietly, effortlessly, in the days ahead. Watch as life bends itself to your assumption. And when it does, for it will, remember this moment. Remember that you have proven the greatest secret ever whispered to man, that the universe is not outside of you, but within you, responding to your every inner tone. So tonight, as you drift into the silence of sleep, may you carry this truth in your heart. Your imagination is God speaking, and when you speak in the language of feeling, all of creation listens. Rest in that knowing. Speak softly to the infinite within you. And as you fall asleep, say with quiet certainty, "It is done."